Hello, welcome back to Addicted to Recovery, the podcast bringing you the truth about addiction. I am Christopher White. I'm joined as ever by my dear friend, co-host and fellow recovering addict, Max Thomas. We are also joined by Claire Darnell.
Welcome.
Hello.
Was just saying before, how do I know Claire?
Yeah.
And you were taking the Wanstead meeting in my first, I don't have to listeners have like put my timeline together, I'm sure they have. My first little stint in recovery when I had 100 days.
All right.
You were taking the Wanstead meeting.
Yeah.
And geographically, it's actually close to my house, but I always sort of came out to Essex for my meetings. But the Wanstead meeting was great, really good.
Yeah,
and
nice.
You could get in when you was a newcomer. You have to really jump in if you want to share at Wanstead because it's so busy.
Yeah.
But when it's like newcomers time, this 10 minutes is set aside for you newcomers in the first 90 days. I could get a word in, but you know I like to share. So that's probably why I'm still going. But it was always, you know what I used to say? You was like a matriarch of the group.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You really put people at edge.
Brilliant.
What I always thought was, if you was like, so if your husband was in the mafia and he died, you'd take over the business.
Comfortably take over.
Yeah. You'd become the new boss.
Like
That's what
Griselda.
There you go.
Griselda playing.
There you go. That's what we used to say. You'd be like, you know what I mean? You can run shit.
Yeah.
So yeah, thanks so much for coming on. We had a chat in the car on the way out, and it's been really good to reconnect. So I haven't seen you the whole time I've been drinking again this time.
Yeah.
No.
Oh, wow.
Saw you once at the convention.
Yes.
Yeah,
we
briefly as well.
Does
Yeah.
he seem different?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
really different. Yeah. Like the same confident Chris.
Yeah.
But I
But
mean
this
it.
time with some sort of, grounding
Substance behind
underneath
it,
it. Yeah.
It was just a mask before.
Yeah,
This one's real.
you feel really more embodied, I would say, in your recovery. Yeah,
That's nice to hear. Appreciate that.
What
beautiful.
do we say?
to
Your outsides
experience.
match your insides, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Which
totally.
is,
Yeah,
I struggled with that for years. And
yeah,
because I saw Chris when he first time around, and he came to a meeting with his mum, and he was openly admitted it on the podcast. He was still using. Do you know what I mean? But he had this. Like that photo he's just shown us of him at the festival when he was still using. He had that
Yeah.
still comfortable. I've got things going
False
on. but
bravado.
Internally,
Yeah.
just screaming.
Yeah.
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 And that was my story as well. I had loads going on, and I was. I mean, if someone who met me for that first time would say he's a lovely guy and he's got it all going on. But internally, I was in absolute turmoil.
Yeah, and if you watched me for a whole week, not just for an hour, you'd be like, oh, he's not right. He's doing strange things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I could hold it together in front of anyone for half an hour, i.e. my parents. I'll go around there. Everything's good. Yep, no problem.
Oh yeah.
Get to 45 and I'm going to start acting a little bit moody. You know what I mean? That was my sort of superpower, my addict superpower. I could slide in and out and you wouldn't know. But if you'd done a lot of time around me, you'd notice I was moving a bit mad.
yeah. And I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's like all of us, the mask would slip eventually, right?
That's it. The mask would slip.
Yeah.
Great way of putting it.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's great. I mean, it's great to meet you for the first time as well, Max, because I've listened to some of the episodes and I really love what you're doing here.
Thank you.
Like, it's been really beautiful to see how you're sort of destigmatizing what it is to be in recovery, how, you're role modeling that we can do things that we wouldn't expect that we would be doing, right? Because we come in here and we become more authentically ourselves and we find parts of ourselves that enable us to want to be of service.
Yeah.
Right? It's an extension of the service structure, really, in many ways. Yeah.
I think I've seen what it can do for me, so I want to try and let other people get it as well.
Yeah, we're carrying a message.
I've got a few sponsees who, because I think I was doing some step work for sponsee last night, and he's just started step 2, and he was going around on this merry-go-round of just the same behaviour. So he was, admitting I'm powerless over drugs and I'm completely unmanageable. But then he wasn't taking that leap of faith in that step 2. And he was going round and round and round. So that void was still there. And if you don't pack it with the hope and the faith in step 3, then it's just redundant, really. And I think that is a common story I've seen in the fellowship, sadly, that people come in, they're battered, and then they start feeling a bit better. And then they don't jump on the hope and the faith train. They just go back out for a bit more experience.
Yeah, I think that's why rock solid step 1 is so important.
Yeah, definitely. And I think actually that rock bottom is different for everybody, right?
course.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
can't really judge,
No.
you know, and if somebody comes in and they realize that they're not ready yet, then we need to let them go
Of
and
course.
do their experimentation. And
course.
the great thing is recovery isn't going anywhere, right?
So how clean are you, Claire?
I know it's one day at a time. I know
Yeah,
that.
of course.
But I'll be 13 in December. So
Wow.
yeah,
So good.
yeah,
Well done,
Wow.
you.
yeah.
And look, we were
2011.
talking on the way up about how your recovery journey has sort of evolved and
Yeah,
the other avenues you've sort of delved down, and
Yeah.
how I think you said you sort of went out and then you went in and down
yeah,
and really got to the bottom of
yeah,
who I am, how you want to behave, how you want to conduct yourself, and just like really at that fundamental core stuff, who am I?
yeah.
And very similar to what Steve was
I
saying.
was going to jump in.
He's
and say that,
35
yeah.
years clean. And he
Yeah.
said for the last 12 years of his recovery, that's been he stopped with the external
Yeah.
and just went in. Who am I?
But he said,
What do I
Claire,
want?
nothing that he had done would have been possible without him having that foundation of clean.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because
Totally.
you're just not aware of yourself, and you're not aware of the other things that you could explore that are out there. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so the recovery was his staple, wasn't it? And then
Yeah.
he could explore himself further.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, recovery, like, because obviously there are gateway drugs that bring us into addiction.
Yeah.
And for me, recovery has been like a gateway drug to meeting more of myself,
Yeah.
you know, to like actually finding myself. It enabled me to open up to the possibility that there was more life, this kind of thing that I was imagining in the back of my mind, that there must be more to life than this. I found through recovery.
Yeah.
You know, like I always had an element of understanding that there was a bigger picture, like the universe, spirituality, all of those things.
Do you think this was still when you were using as well?
Yeah, totally.
Your whole life?
Like from
'Cause that's- I agree
childhood,
with
I
that.
always knew there was more, you know, that I didn't call it God. I was brought up in an atheist household. I still don't really, I will use the word God as a default because everybody understands it. It's a spiritual, not religious program. Like I've managed to define a spiritual practice that really is my own. And that's the beautiful thing about recovery. We get to do that. But ultimately, I kind of knew there was something more out there, but I couldn't access it because I was anesthetizing myself with my drugs, you know. And all I was really trying to do in the whole time I was using is reach some kind of spiritual connection with a power greater than myself.
Yeah.
And my way of doing that was by, you know, getting high, taking copious amounts of whatever substance to connect with other humans and with this being, this, you know, and to become more enlightened. And that meant I was leaving my body constantly, you know, leaving my human experience.
Getting out of your head.
Yeah, I literally used to call it, I'm going to get out of my head.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't stay in my head. Like for me, what I've realized through doing the work in recovery is that, you know, my head is the problem. You know, my head is just basically where my critic lives, where my ego lives. And actually, you know, my spirit is in my body. Yeah. And yeah.
Soul.
Yeah, my soul is in my body, and my soul wants what's best for me and what's best for everybody. And actually, talking of God, what I've now come to believe is God is within me. God is within my heart. So, and again, this is for each of us to define our own spiritual pathway. So for me, that's kind of where I've landed after 12 and a bit years of experimentation along the steps, you know, and various journeys through the steps. And loads of experimentation with spiritual pathways, you know, years of Buddhism, like literally, you know, the stuff that I do now, which is more on the esoteric and witchy tip. But ultimately, it's all about connecting with something bigger than ourselves.
Faith.
Yeah. Faith. Yeah.
So I listened to a thing today about happiness. There's another point I wanted to get back on as well, but you just sort of sparked this off. The guy was talking about happiness. And part of happiness is faith, but it's not necessarily faith, a sect, or a denomination of any kind of religion. It's, we are small, the universe is big.
Yes.
And if you can get your head around that, you've got half a chance. And then you go looking for it. With that mindset, I am not the center of the universe. I am an insignificant speck in the bigger picture.
Totally.
And that's humility. And you start going on the journey, you find, like you said, it says in the original AA literature, be quick to see where religious people are at. Go and explore. It also says, do it alongside, not instead of a program.
Yeah.
Because first and foremost, I'm an addict.
Yep.
And the most successful way of treating that is the 12 steps.
Yeah.
There's other ways. I know there are other ways. None of it particularly worked for me.
Yeah.
But get that right first. Like we were saying on the way up here, get that right first. Everything else starts falling into place. But then also, because I've got this mind and this active body, I can't stagnate and sit in one place
That's
for
right.
too long. I need more. And exactly like you said, you went looking for it.
Yeah, totally. And I'm a spiritual explorer, you know, by nature.
Yeah.
So there's always, like, for me, I'm always like eyes open and like heart open and just feeling like, okay, well, what's that mean? And why do people feel that way? And what makes them think that? And, you know, what is it in their history and what is it in their present that is driving them to behave this way? So I can't help but want to dive deeper. And then in meeting people, it opens me to exploring new things, you know? So, yeah, I absolutely believe that. I think, to go back to the original point, it's a gateway drug to spirituality, to finding ourselves, to, you know, meeting more of ourselves and to getting more honest about who we are. And in fact, I think we touched on this on the way up here, Chris, but it's that, who was I always supposed to be before drugs came along and robbed me of that?
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
I'm going through a bit of that at the moment. It's just a lovely process. And the thing is, I'm so comfortable with it now. I'm not, I used to be so consumed by what people would think about if I love my nature and I'm out in the garden all the time. But really want to take 5 years, not in a chance would I let people know that. Not a chance.
Yeah.
But it's just, again, recovery has given me that platform to be able to say, no, this is me. And I love doing these things. I love my poetry. Again, not a chance that I'd show that true self when I was out in active addiction. And it's only 5 years, but it's been such a lovely process. And it didn't happen overnight. It's the gift that keeps on giving. The last couple of years is when I've really felt, it's when I've had that greater connection with my higher power. Definitely.
I've seen it happen.
That's what kicked off. But yeah,
that's beautiful.
I'm so excited to see what the future brings as well.
Yeah, I love that. I love how you touched on, like, because what people think, you know, what will other people think? I remember doing my first step 4 and probably sort of halfway through me reading out my, you know, moral inventory, all these things that happened. And my sponsor, she said, like, just hold on a minute. She said, who are these people? So I said, what do you mean? She said, these people that you keep talking about, what will people think? Literally everything was like, I can't do that. Well, you know, what will people think?
People.
And I said, you know, the people. And she said, where are these people? And I said, they're in my head. You know, there's like rent a crowd, follows me around, criticizing me, telling me what they think I should do. And actually a really big gift of recovery has been realizing that those people are me. They're kind of self-projected opinions about myself. And a lot of them are shame-based. And actually the process of working a step 4 and then multiple step 4s and that shedding all of these things that I've carried through my life, all of the shame, has enabled me to gradually start putting the people to bed, you know, putting them back where they belong and saying, it's all right, you know, we're okay. I've got this.
Yeah, I don't need you anymore, actually.
Yeah, like, thank you for your support.
Thanks for sharing.
Because even like I touched on the ego's doing a job, right? The ego wants to keep us safe. It's just there trying to keep us safe. And the ego will choose, and I talk about this a lot, but the ego will choose known misery over uncharted happiness, you know? So I think the voices in my head were just different aspects of my personality that were like, yeah, you're using and you're drinking and you're doing all these things and you're addicted to all of these behaviors, but at least we know what happens next. Right? Just keep doing that, right? Because we can deal with that, even though it was escalating. It was like, but we know the direction of travel. Whereas, you know, moving into a process of recovery was completely unknown. Like, I'd never lived without drugs. You know, I'd started using at started drinking at 13, 14 in the park, you know, over the park, getting obliterated.
Good times.
Yeah, take us back there a little bit. What was childhood like for you?
Well,
we could start there a little bit.
Well, how long you got? It was, let's just say,
as long as you need.
Majorly dysfunctional.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so I know a lot that it doesn't have to be for people to end up in addiction, you know. But my story was majorly dysfunctional family.
Yeah.
Eldest of 3 daughters, absent father, loads of abandonment wounding. Even, you know, with the present parent, there was definitely some abandonment going on in there, like non-availability of parenting, role modeling. And yeah, lots to escape from. And I think, you know, you hear a lot of people speak about this in meetings. Like one of my first routes of escape was reading.
Yeah.
You know,
Fantasy,
books, creation, you know, being in the garden, being in nature. Like I was just a pure little fantasy kind of witchy, like a little Pisces kid, you know. Like I just I used to say to my mum, why didn't you call me Moonchild? You know, I was just a total little hippie. Actually, for my 50th birthday, I gave myself the middle name of Moonchild.
Did you really? Oh my God, that is so
I
good.
integrated my inner child to a degree that I was like, I'm going to own that.
Yeah.
That
Was your
who I
mum
was
like
always
that?
meant to be.
Hippie style? Or?
My mum was really young.
Right, okay.
Yeah, my mum had 3 of us by the time she was 24.
Yeah.
That's young.
Yeah. So, and she did her best, you know, with what she had.
That's what I was going to say when you was talking about abandonment and like not available parenting. I was just thinking, 24 years old.
Yeah, she was
3
a baby.
girls, no husband.
Yeah.
Cool.
Fucking tough.
Tough,
right? And I'm really glad you said she did the best she could.
She did her best.
Because most parents don't, even the parents that come from like the worst families, they still want the best for their kids. It's just, they ain't got the tools to do it.
Yeah.
I've got empathy for them guys.
Yeah, totally. And I believe, you know, I'm going back to my own spiritual beliefs, but I believe this little soul comes along, right, occupies this here body, and there's a journey that it's here to take. And we choose our parents. I believe this. I believe our souls choose the parents that we end up with because we have something to learn in this lifetime. So I chose this childhood. I chose this experience, and my parents accepted the challenge, you know, and it is what it is. Everything's exactly as it's supposed to be. Right? I really believe that. But being in recovery is the thing that's taught me that. Because if you'd have said to me 12 years ago, I'd have been like, yeah, you know, they did this to me and they did that to me.
Victim mode.
When I used to look at the steps, you know, you go to meetings and you've got the big poster with the 12 steps up on the wall, and it would be like step 8 and 9. I used to look at it and think, I'm never going to have to do those because everyone just did everything to me.
I didn't hurt anyone.
I didn't hurt anyone.
I felt exactly the same.
Yeah, so deluded about the harm I'd caused.
Me too.
But the childhood, you know, was a pathway to, just needing to escape. Really, needing to escape my reality. And there were like very, you know, there was abuse in my childhood of various forms that I don't really need to share, but just for identification, you know, there was sexual abuse, there was physical abuse, emotional abuse, and a lot of catastrophe, just like irregularity, really hard on a child's nervous system, sense of self-esteem, that kind of stuff.
During them formative years.
Yeah, and then as a teenager, very, very big consequences to my drinking.
Right, okay.
You know, so
the drinking started about 12, did you say?
13, 14, I would say. Yeah, and very big consequences, like drinking to the point of not being able to care for myself and you know, being sexually assaulted, being raped by a school friend, you know. So huge impact in terms of my sense of safety, my sense of well-being. And it was only through coming into recovery and doing that step forward with my sponsor that my sponsor said, that wasn't your fault. Even if you were falling down drunk, you didn't consent.
No, of course.
And actually you were, you know, raped. And actually for me, what I in that moment realized was I've been using on this for 24 years. You know, this has been like really impactful to me. So another gift of recovery is like we actually get to see not only the pieces that we are responsible for, but actually the pieces we're not responsible for.
Totally.
It puts everything into perspective.
I completely relate.
Yeah.
Completely relate.
Yeah.
So many things I used to use off. We had a little chat on the way up. Like I've touched on it on the podcast before, and it's like the confusion and like feeling like a victim and using on it, and then even more to the fact I spoke about this. I kept it as like an ace up my sleeve
Yeah.
For when I really needed a good one.
Reservation.
Of course I did this.
Yeah.
This happened to me.
Yeah.
Right? So it was like I used on it, and then I used it.
Mm.
You know what I mean? And it's like, I was a child.
Yeah.
I didn't do that.
Yeah.
I didn't do that to myself. You know what I mean? But and now, after going through the work, like you said, I fucking put that to bed 2 years ago. It means nothing. It holds no power.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah, and I can say now, you know, like I keep saying the word, but you know, for purposes of identification, I was raped. There was a time where I couldn't say that. I had so much shame that actually wasn't mine. Wasn't mine to hold. So
of course.
Incredible, really, to get that freedom through something that wasn't really even about that. It was about the way that I used drugs and substances to manage my feelings. And actually the side effect of that was being able to understand, oh, this is really big. And also I need some outside help.
Yeah, totally.
You know, so accessing as part of my recovery.
So did you see the progression in the drinking quickly? Did it?
Yeah.
Yeah, through your teens.
Yeah, totally. But you know what was weird, Max, was because the consequences were so severe so quickly, it had the weirdest effect on me.
Okay.
It turned me into a functioning addict.
Yeah.
Because I could use, well, this is what I believe, like my disease, my addict knew if you go too far, she'll stop. So actually, let's keep her on the right side of functioning.
Yeah.
Same as me.
Yeah. And so I was like a highly functioning addict.
Yeah.
So I was always like the alchemist. I was just having a bit of this and a bit of that.
Oh,
and
God.
like just trying to
balance.
just stay on that. It was hard work.
Me too. Oh, yeah, it's fucking graft.
Doing that for 24 years, you know, that alchemy, being together while you're actually completely high is really hard work.
It's exhausting. It's exhausting. And look, I spoke about how I use. Listeners know how I use. Max knows very well how I use. It was just that. I do that. It's going to make me come down a little bit. If I do that, it's going to put me up a bit. Oh, I need to eat something. That's what's going to fix this. And it was just constantly just to get to zero.
Yeah, totally.
Completely pointless.
Yeah.
But I didn't know any other way.
So you're using on your own. Is it social at this point? Was there elements of fun in here?
Definitely would be sort of using on my own, but hiding in sociability, sort of, you know, having it with people who I didn't really want to be friends with, you know, that shallow surface kind of relationships. Like gravitating towards people in my working environment that would enable my using, you know, not realizing even that there were people in my working environments that didn't use, because why would I? Because birds of a feather flock together, right? I wanted to go anywhere where I was going to be enabled. My entire, you know, like my formative relationship was with a DJ. So the whole music scene, you know, like I had this whole thing built around the, you know, music scene and dancing and raving and clubbing and, you know, it was just everything enabled. I worked in recruitment for many years, which was very much like sniff, booze,
take clients out,
big client dinners, getting them on it. And then I went into media sales. That was even more prolific. That's eventually what brought me into a rock bottom.
Everywhere, isn't it, really?
Everywhere.
Absolutely. Some more than others, but it is everywhere.
I mean, and to be fair, and I think it's important to mention this too, even my weed smoking was out of control. You know, I remember at my very first meeting, this wonderful man said to me, what about, you know, I was saying, I'm not sure if I need to be here, you know, and he said, do you smoke weed? And I said, yeah. And he went, and did you ever want to stop? And I said, yeah, like all the time, but then I'd have to buy more. And he went, even that is enough for you to be here. You know, like he helped me to qualify. So, yeah, I think, you know, there was always something. I always had a crutch, even when I thought it weren't that bad. Even through my pregnancies, when I stopped using drugs, there were other things that came in. As soon as I could pick up again, I would pick up.
That's a great indicator.
You say that about like flocking into the wrong crowds, because I used to think, and it's horrible, I'm just thinking back, like I used to think people that didn't use were boring. That was my whole attitude towards it. Like, what do you mean you're not staying out for 2-3 nights? It's like, it was just mad. I suppose I'm a different guy today, but it was, I just used to think, well, what are you doing on a Saturday night? I mean, I just couldn't fathom like doing normal stuff. But normal stuff for me now is just, I love it. I love my life today. It's just,
It was the normal stuff that I could never do. But I wanted it so bad. I've got it now.
Yeah.
Just that boring, wake up, same time, routine.
But there's a message in
It's
there.
not boring.
It's not boring at all.
It's what I thought was boring, but it's not. We was talking about it. Strip it down to the bare minimum. You don't need all that stuff.
Yes.
You don't need it all. I heard a great quote, by Coco Chanel.
Yeah.
It's that
Where'd you hear this?
the best things in life are free, but the second best things are really expensive. Right? And that was my mentality. It's like, I want stuff, need things.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't need things. What I need is, so I kissed my missus, I kissed my baby, and my Theo was like, hey, what about me? And I was like, I'm coming to you, mate. Relax, you know what I mean? So then next time, I'll make sure he gets his kiss first.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Perry said it when he was on it. It's nice to experience nice things.
Yeah.
Because I've experienced nice things, but I know they do not make me feel whole. I can buy a beautiful car and it can have my attention for about, I don't know, a week maybe. And then it's just...
What if someone scratched it?
Yeah, I just don't care. Like whatever it is, it doesn't make me feel whole inside. Like seeing my kid run a race at sports day makes me feel whole inside. That's what it's all about. And being not only being there at sports day, but being present and actually feeling and having that moment where you can you're aware of your surroundings, like you're in the space. That's what it is for me.
Of course it is. Of course it is. It's them fundamental, basic. It's like human. It's a human experience. Purely human experience. All that other stuff is like, what? It's not fucking real. 200 years ago, it didn't exist.
Yeah.
It's not real. That is pleasure. It's not happiness.
Yeah.
It's dopamine. It's not serotonin. I heard a great thing today about, can money buy you happiness? And it's like, it's all relative. You could buy a £10 million house and the guy moves in next door and he's having parties every night and you can't sleep. Yeah. You go and spend $5 on a set of earplugs. Now you can sleep. The 10 million didn't work, but the £5 did. You know what I mean? It's all relative. So it's just like you said, and I know you've gone on this spiritual journey. When I get down to the basics, like my feet are in the grass and I'm watching my baby, like he's just started crawling and he comes up to me and he's got his 3 little teeth and he's like on my knee, like, and I'm like, mate.
Sweetest kid you ever seen.
He's so sweet. And then like my oldest, we was talking about him on the way up, he's such a sweet boy. Like he's social and he's active and he's polite. He's got such a kind side. And I'm like, oh my God, like we made him.
Yeah.
That's the good gear. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I speak to Chris, has just been in Ibiza for a wedding, and I spoke to him on the second day, and he's like, I cannot wait to go home to see the kids.
Yeah.
Then that is the change, Chris, right? Yeah. That's it.
And look, just to touch on that, for the listeners, we were talking about on the way out, and I posted on the story while I was away, like it is probably party central of the world.
Or at least it was when I was using
it. Right? And it still is. It was going on all around me, right? And people were going, are you going to be all right in Ibiza? And I'm like, yeah, no doubt in my mind.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Because my program's rock solid.
Yeah.
I've got a really good step one. I know for me to use is to eventually die. I've got an obligation to the listeners. I've got an obligation to my sponsees. I love my family. And it's like, I'll be completely honest. First day I'm sitting around the pool, my mate brings a beer over and I'm like, oh, 1 beer would be nice. 5 seconds later, I'm like, no, it wouldn't, because I've just played the tape forward. Totally. Then it's like, I'm watching it all happen around me and then I'm bumping into people. Like the guy, there was people over there that I used to get my bits from, right? And they're like, oh my God, you look so well. I haven't seen you for so long. Oh, you are absolutely smashing it. Like, and I was just, people were just like giving me this praise. And I'm like, you know what? I do look good. I am fucking smashing it. Yeah. And I was owning that stuff because I felt like such a piece of shit for so many years. Yeah. Now I look at where I've come in relatively a short space of time. 3.5 years is nothing when you think about the grand scheme of things. And I had such a good time.
I spoke to you, didn't I? Because you mentioned that 1 beer to me and I told you that story. Like one beer for me
Yeah.
I'm in the gutter.
Yeah. Go on, tell that story.
No, I can't.
It's so good.
No, it's
just a story about Max being unmanageable. He goes out for one beer, and let's just say it wasn't one beer.
No.
Yeah.
We've all been there, Max.
Was it great?
Yeah, but look, I had such a good time. We honoured everything to do with this wedding. We went to every event, and then me and my missus made sure we done something on it by ourselves. We ate great food. I woke up. I joined a gym. I took out a week pass at a gym. It was like a 15-minute walk from the hotel because there was no gym at the hotel. I went there on the first day. He's like, it's €15 or it's 40 for a week. And I was like, sign me up, mate. And I went every morning.
Nice.
7 o'clock, I'm in the gym with like just all Spanish people and me. It was fantastic. 15-minute walk there, 15-minute walk back. And I was brimming, absolutely brimming. And then my mate comes down like, oh, mate, what happened? I was like, I know what happened. You probably don't. We'll leave it there.
You're like, morning. Zippity-doo-dah.
I loved it. I had such a good time. A better time than I could ever have when I was using it.
Totally. I think I shared this with Chris on the way up here, and I was saying, I think I was a couple of years clean, and I was in a step 4, and I went out to Ibiza with my daughter and my partner, and every other time that I'd been out to Ibiza, I'd obviously been so bang on it. I'd come back with my mind destroyed.
Need another
still
holiday.
High, having trips on the tube on the way to work because it was like something from Jacob's Ladder. It was not fun. And like throwing up in my bin at work on the Monday. Like really overdoing it, like proper Ibiza style. And this time, going out there with my daughter, working my step 4 at night. My partner was like, I'm ready to go home. We'd spent the holiday there. He was ready to go home. And I said, you know what? I'm going to extend the holiday for an extra week. I stayed there with my daughter alone. I was perfectly safe. Like we still had the villa that we were using. She'd go to bed, before I'd go to bed, we'd be sort of driving the car around chasing the sunset, and me and my toddler. It was the beginning of like a brand new start for me in terms of my independence. It was the first holiday I'd taken alone. And I saw Ibiza in a whole new light. Like I realised all the time I'd been out there getting on it, I'd missed all of the spirituality about the place. I'd missed the entire essence of the island, which is magical.
It is a spiritual place.
When you get away from San Antonio, and even Ibiza Old Town is mental, right?
Yeah, that's exactly where I was.
When you get up to the north of the island, it is so magical.
Serene, man.
Oh,
I need to go make peace, I think.
I
honestly,
would
mate, you should
recommend it.
Yeah.
And there's actually meetings out there as well,
There is,
And now we've got since COVID and like lockdown, we've got such an amazing support infrastructure online.
Unbelievable.
Like you can't fault it. You can go anywhere you like. And on that note, I've been loads of places. Like I've been to New York on business, and I've been out there. The fellowship have taken me in. They've had me sharing out there. I've been literally swept up by, my fellowship.
I've done meetings in New York. They're good, aren't they?
They're amazing.
Yeah, I went to Harlem for a meeting.
Amazing. Like I've got one of my closest recovery friends is a Mexican man. Yeah. Shout out to Jacob.
Hello, Jacob.
Who
¿Cómo está?
is from New York. And when I went out there the first time, I got introduced to him by another chap. Shout out to Raymond Ramos. And
I know this guy.
He's so good.
Yeah, he's like a speaker.
He came, he picked me up from work, and he took me to meetings, and then I met Jacob, and Jacob and I have maintained a friendship. And when I went back out there last time with my daughter, he picked us up and he took us out for breakfast with his family. Like this worldwide fellowship is family.
Yeah, it is.
And no matter where you go in the world, there's nuances and differences, but ultimately you know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
You're going to get recovery. You're going to get supported.
But even I only just met Claire outside, but I just felt an instant connection and able to talk to you very, very easily. And I feel it all the time when I meet people in recovery.
Because you know each other.
Yeah.
You know what each other are all about.
Yeah.
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 And that's magical. It's unique.
Yeah.
Right? What is it? People with shared trauma connect. There's that analogy in the AA book about the survivors of the Titanic. So it's like the guys in the very low level, like the bilge, like they paid a tenner to get across, and then you got the guys that are in like the first class suites. When the ship goes down, they're all equal.
Yeah.
And then you get back to shore, and then society divides everyone back up again. You know what I mean? So when we're broken, I feel your pain, you feel my pain. I know where you've been, you know where I've been. And there's a spiritual connection.
Yeah, absolutely.
Talking about boats, one of my sponsees, he went on a cruise liner, like a Disney cruise line or something like that. And there was meetings on the cruise ship. Every cruise ship apparently now has meetings on it.
Oh my God.
He turned up and there was one other guy there from America, and they had like a mini meeting, I suppose, a conference.
Those two to make a meeting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he's fairly new in, and he felt so, he was buzzing when he found out this meetings were on, because he just knew he would be all right.
Yeah.
It was that.
Yeah.
He knew he was going to be held on that cruise ship. It was wicked. What a wicked thing to.
Yeah, that sounds great. I didn't know about that.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been to festivals, like I went to, there's this wonderful festival called Into the Wild, which is a sober festival, a clean festival. And it was a massive part of my spiritual awakening, because what I'd realized is, like, in my using, in order to find ways and means to get more, I'd become corporate Claire.
Yeah.
Right. So, like, this hippie witch woman that you see in front of you once was like the most staid kind of corporate, money hungry.
That's the one that was going to run the firm.
Right.
Yeah.
Griselda.
Yeah. You can just call me G. Yeah. But she, like,
It's recruitment
I
days.
bent myself out of shape, basically.
Right.
Yeah. Like, when I first came into recovery, I didn't even look like me. Like, I had my hair permanently straightened. I had this severe little bob, like, I'd changed all of the outside. This mask was huge.
Yeah.
And, ultimately it's kind of, we get to change, we get to revert back to who we're supposed to be. And we get to eventually, I like to call it kind of actualize into, our truth, don't we? We get to, like, really be who we're supposed to be. So, it's kind of, there's never a point at which you're not supposed to, that you can't continue to grow. I think one of the things I really want to talk about as well is, I see recovery as a bridge to normal living.
Yep.
Right. And there's different ways that people come into recovery, and, like, it's so important for us at the beginning. I think you spoke about a newcomer, and the person on the boat, holding that meeting and it being really wonderful for them. And I agree, because when I went to that festival, finding that 12-step tent, and it was multi-denomination, like, all fellowships were in there.
Yeah.
Finding it for me was like such an anchor
Yeah.
to, I'm here in this festival, and there's this thing that I recognize. Yeah. And what it gave me was a safe place to go to and say, I'm in this territory where I would usually be using drugs, and actually I'm a bit out of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
And in that 12-step tent, I had a spiritual awakening, and I was like, I lost myself.
Yeah.
Like, I became corporate Claire, like, this light bulb went on over my head, and I was like, who was she? Who am I? And this, like, beautiful hippie me was allowed to start blossoming again, And this is the piece, I think, like, all of these constructs and these things that we find through recovery. I'm going off a bit here, but ultimately, what I've realized is there's so much value in that safety. And then as we start to journey along the road, and you've got 3.5 years, you've got 5.5 years, amazing, well done. But as we journey along, we realize, something's got to change here, because this construct, we start to grow and meet the construct, right? We've got the safety mechanism around us, and then we touch the edges of it, and we're like, okay, I'm bumping up against the edges now. Yeah. There's got to be more, right? Yeah. So we have to change up our recovery.
Yeah.
So the way we do things is that we have to explore the bridge to normal living. We start crossing over the bridge. We're like, okay, recovery is super important, and it's always going to be a cornerstone of my life. But how do I keep it vibrant? Where's the vitality? Am I balancing recovery and home life? It's no good saying, I'm in recovery, if you're constantly in a meeting and you're not actually there for your family.
No.
I've struggled with it. I feel like I've just got the balance right now.
Amazing.
And what you were saying there about growing, to, like, revert back to a plant. The plant's not growing, it's dying. Isn't it? So this is what I think. If you stagnate, I could really picture what you were saying. You touch the edges of it.
I was there.
And it's going to have to spill out somewhere, right? What direction is it going to spill out?
Yeah.
Down the good way or down the destructive path? brilliant.
But doing this, Chrissy, this podcast is another avenue that we've gone down.
Of course it is. Like we just mentioned, two addicts having a conversation is a meeting. Well, there's three of us here.
Yeah.
I spoke to you, if we're not doing a podcast, I go to a meeting on Thursday. This is spiritually topping me up right now. You know what I mean?
Definitely.
So it's like, and we're recording it. Thousands of people are listening to it. Carrying the message.
Yeah.
There was a big fear of ours when we started.
Yeah.
Are people in the fellowship?
How it's going to be received,
Are they going to be okay with this?
Yes.
Right? And they are.
Yeah.
Because we're doing the primary purpose of the fellowship that we attend.
Totally.
We're not affiliated. We're not saying we are them.
No.
We go there, we use it, and we are encouraging everybody else to go there and use it.
Yeah.
Could be any fellowship, doesn't matter. Find your people, find your tribe. Like you said at that festival, multi-denomination, it's all the same.
Common goal.
Common goal,
Recovery.
common problem, common solution, common goal. And it's a sense of home. Once you had that home base, you're like, I'm okay now.
Yeah. Yeah. And every
It's a
year that
beautiful
I
thing.
went back after that to that festival, that was like a safe place for me to go to top up, you know. And then, I mean, it was a clean festival. I wasn't in a lot of danger, but it was still triggering.
Yeah, of course.
Being around
Large groups of people can be
people who
triggered.
were just like completely out there, right? Doing their thing. I mean, by the sort of second, third year, I was out there doing my thing
you were
too,
you were
right?
that guy.
This construct as well, like this I feel is quite important, especially if you've been around for a while, right? No doubt some of your listeners are going to have a bit of clean time. One of the things I've had to sort of travel as I've gone through my recovery is keeping it vibrant, keeping it fresh, like what's okay. Because eventually, if you don't, the construct becomes a cage.
Yeah.
And you start to get really hemmed in.
I love that.
And I think it's really important for us to be able to spread our wings.
Yeah.
I didn't get clean to not be sovereign, you know, to not be able to express myself. Similarly, you guys doing your podcast would be, if you didn't do it because you were worrying about what people thought, and it's imaginary, by the way.
Yeah, what, that committee.
The same,
the
right? The
committee.
shitty committee in the head.
Yeah.
But it would be a disservice to other people who are seeking recovery. So the same with me, you know, like I host these women's circles, and a large number of the individuals that come to these women's circles have seen me on my journey of finding this, you know, this mentorship that I share with women, have seen me grow in recovery. It's attraction, not promotion, right?
Definitely.
And so I've had the same dialogue internally where I'm like, is this appropriate? What must people think? And let me tell you, some people must be thinking something, because people have opinions.
Of course I know.
And they're entitled to them.
Yeah.
And one of the best things I learned about in recovery is other people's opinions are none of my business.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I was talking to you before, like just going on what you've just said, like if we hadn't have done this podcast, because the listeners don't know, because we don't talk about it, we don't share it, but we have had, I'd say, it's in the hundreds now of people reach out to us and say, thank you so much. I've gone to this meeting because of the podcast. Your honesty has opened up for me to be honest, and I've told whoever about my problem. And
Not just addicts, Max.
no, not just addicts, non-addicts as well. Like, and it gives me it makes the hair on the back of my neck stand up even talk about it now, because this is what we're meant to be doing. I truly believe that. I truly believe that.
It just fell into place. It's not like, right, this is what we're going to do.
Yes.
Plan. We was on the golf course. We was talking about, that's another thing I picked up in recovery and got obsessed with, and I've now got boundaries around. We're chatting like, let's do something together. What are we going to do? Should we do this? Should we do that? And we're like, I got involved in another podcast. I'm like, let's do a podcast. And you was umming and ahhing about whether you wanted to be on the mic.
Yeah.
He'd never done anything like that before. And it's just like falling into place. And now we love it.
Yeah.
We love it.
Yeah.
And the feedback is incredible. Dare I say it, saving lives.
Yeah, and it's a leap of faith, right? And isn't that what we do in recovery? We take a leap of faith, and we ultimately trust the process, right? And the process isn't linear, right? The process is exactly what it's a process. It goes up, it goes down, it goes round corners, and we trust, and we just keep putting one foot in front of the other. And absolutely, this kind of venture podcast is exactly that. So may I speak about what recently?
Of course you can. I've got to get onto that. There's loads of different stuff. Like, what's your Instagram?
It's I am Claire Darnell.
Go and look at it. It's really interesting. And look, you'll get a gist of the stuff you're doing.
Yeah.
And I know so many women can benefit from it.
Yeah.
So come on, tell us a little bit
Thank
about what you do now.
Yeah, so what I do now, and I guess where I've landed, is like years of sponsorship started to show me that, oh, actually I have this and a propensity for supporting others. And even my sponsor was like, I think you'd make an amazing coach, you know? So what I did was I moved and maneuvered into training in coaching.
Right, okay.
And on that journey, I then discovered embodiment. So embodiment is it's basically, how do we come out of the head and exist in the body? How do we feel our feelings from the body and not allow the mind to control? So that's a very sort of short version of it. And the work that I do has been primarily focused and centered on female-bodied individuals so far. And it's beautiful because what it does is it supports people in moving through all of the problems, issues, experiences that they've had in their lives, but in a really body-oriented way. So we can move through, you know, patterns, scripts, stories that you're running that keep you trapped. Through movement practices. So we work with movement, breath, sound, touch, and it's essentially working with eros, you know, like life force.
Using your senses.
Yeah, and it's very sensual practice, but it's also really transformative. So that's kind of the core of what I do. It's feminine embodiment work. But the podcast that I recently started is crazy because I'd been away on a week's training in Costa Rica.
Amazing.
You and I were talking about that. And it's a beautiful spiritual place. Like the ley lines out there are like, wah! You're just like fully charged. And I woke up in the middle of the night with a pure download. This often happens to me since I've been in recovery. You know, I'm open to receiving, you know, the messages that really want to come through. What and how we need to be of service, and we get out of the way, and then we are told this is how you're going to do it. And I was woken up from my sleep, and it was like, you're going to start a podcast, and you're going to call it In Service to Transformation. And actually, what I love about it is it isn't just for women. So it was actually, the message was, it's going to be for everyone. It's going to be for men. It's going to be for women. It's going to be for the queer community. You're going to talk to people with different spiritual beliefs, religious beliefs, different paths of healing. And what we do is we explore what their healing journey has been, like the different modalities and types of healing that they've accessed.
So like who I was 5 years ago compared to who I am now, what I stand for.
Exactly.
That
so
transformation.
Both of you would have such, and you must come and do an episode.
We'll have a chat, definitely. That'd be great.
100%.
Because ultimately what we're doing is we're exploring your own journey. Like, what was your rock bottom? What brought you into a place of healing? And then ultimately, isn't that medicine? Can't you get identification if you're listening, right? That's what we're doing here, And then it's like to allow people to listen and understand that there are different ways to skin a cat, you know? And ultimately, how, this is the key piece, I feel, it's like how our journeys become medicine for others. So just as you are doing, your experiences, all of these adverse experiences you've had, look at how you've transformed it into medicine.
It gives people hope.
Like you say, tens of people texting you a day, thousands of people listening. What a way to turn this really negative experience into something beautiful.
And like we were talking on the way up, the ripple effect.
The ripple effect.
The knock-on effect it has on everyone else.
It's stunning. And I truly believe that it's that will change the world, you know? And I'm not, you know, it isn't like, I want to change the world. It's like, I know Messiah. If I change me and that helps one more person and that helps one more person, the ripple effect is huge, right? We really can make a difference. And that's kind of what happened behind the podcast.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah, I'm absolutely
such a broad area as well, isn't it? Like the transformation, it can go so far.
It has been, such an eye-opener for me, you know, like I've been fortunate enough to have experienced over the last 12 years or so some incredible teachers and facilitators. And they've, you know, everyone I've asked has been a big fat yes.
And not just that,
come and
Claire,
speak.
You got your ears open.
Yeah.
I don't know about you. I couldn't listen. You couldn't teach me. You couldn't tell me anything. I had a retort for everything. Coming into recovery, one of the biggest gifts I've got, I can sit here and actively listen to someone when they're speaking to me. I didn't have that gift. So like you said, go backwards on your journey.
Mm-hmm.
First things first, you mentioned it. I need to get out of the way
Yes.
because I was in my own way.
Yeah.
Put all that stuff down. You go on a journey.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's been a hell of a journey so far.
Yeah.
And like Max, you mentioned it earlier as well. I am so optimistic about my life, my future, my family's life, my family's future. And I'm just so filled with hope.
Yeah.
This that little break that I've just had has put me in this place where it's just like, I'm just so happy.
Yeah, you seem happy to.
So happy.
Yeah.
Oh.
I can't, like, it's making me emotional thinking about it because I was so sad, man.
Yeah.
I was so sad and just like broken.
Yeah.
And now I'm like fixed and happy. You know what I mean? I don't, it's like, and I know how it happened. I just didn't think it was ever going to be possible.
Totally. And I love that. You didn't think it was going to be possible. And I think what recovery teaches us is we don't need to have a plan. Like, it's nice, it's good. Like, I'm totally with having 5-year plans and stuff, but actually it's not essential. And I think if we just trust, recovery opens us up to new things that we never would have dreamed of. Like, I'll speak a bit about this because I think it's been a really important part of my journey of being in recovery is like understanding around my sexuality.
Right.
So, you know, I came into recovery very much a straight woman.
Right.
Yeah. I'd had some experiences previously with women, but they were just like when I was high, when I was drunk.
Yeah.
I, you know, four and a bit years ago, met my girlfriend.
Okay.
Yeah. And realised that I am definitely not straight.
Okay.
You know?
Yeah.
I met her through the rooms.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we struck up this friendship. My relationship had ended. My ex, even actually, when we'd broken up, had said, "Are you going to date women now, Claire?"
Oh, really?
Because he kind of knew.
Yeah, of course.
This was always going to be a part of who I was. But yeah, ultimately, you know, what recovery gave me was this possibility to try something new and see what happens.
And it's okay to be who you really are.
It's okay to explore. It's safe, you know. I came to terms, you know, with that over a period of time because I hadn't realised how much internalised homophobia I had. You know, I grew up in a really liberal household. Like, my mum was young, my uncle was gay, you know, I had queer friends, but I hadn't realised how much ingrained shame I had and judgment I had around homosexuality or like non-heterosexuality. Yeah, I had to work through that. And how did I do it? I went to queer meetings. I went to LGBTQIA plus meetings within the fellowship and they held me. Wow. And they protected my anonymity through that process of me getting okay with it. They were there for me. And it was like I went back to being a newcomer, you know?
Yeah, and a different kind of meeting.
Wow.
Yeah. One of my, you know, queer friends who's in the fellowship with some clean time, I confided in her and said, like, what the hell? Like, this has really shook me. I don't know. What are people going to back to
what
that
people
problem?
Think?
What are people going to think?
What people?
And she said, you know, that stuff that you're projecting on other people, that's your own internalized homophobia. You need to go to LGBTQ meetings and you need to share that stuff.
To their NA or just
specialist meetings. So this is the beautiful thing as well.
So if you think you're scared to come out, is that the meeting, what they're for?
Well, no. I mean, they're just there for people who identify as non-straight.
Yeah.
To discuss their sexuality.
Go and be
to be in recovery.
To be in recovery as well.
Within 12-step fellowship, we have special interest groups, right? So you've got culture meetings for people of colour, you've got LGBTQ meetings, you've got for gay people, non-straight.
Foreign language meetings.
You've got foreign language meetings, you've got meetings for people who have illness in recovery.
Women's meetings.
Exactly. Women's, men's. So it's another sort of no, it's okay. It's fine. I mean, why would you know if you don't know
No,
exactly.
No,
It would never have occurred to me previously to go to one of those meetings until my friend said, you need to go to one of these meetings.
And it opened up a whole nother... Yeah.
You know? Oh, yeah, because I'm not straight, am I? You know, it was like this whole thing.
Why do I need to go there?
And actually, do you know what's been overwhelmingly lovely is in spite of the fact that it could have been seen as controversial that, you know, I ended up falling in love with this woman who had less clean time than me, right? That's the truth of it. Who I'd met through the rooms. You know, we're still going strong all these years later. Like, she's like an absolute, she just texted me actually. But it's like this beautiful relationship. And without a doubt, whenever I share that, men and women will come up to me and say, "Oh, it's so good to hear you say that because I'm really struggling with my sexuality."
There you go.
You know, like I've been in, you know, I'm a married dad and I know I'm gay and I don't know how to deal with this. And my advice is you need to go to some LGBTQ meetings.
There you go, because you've got the answer now. Does it work
This
for
is
you?
what someone said for me, right? So
It's exactly like someone coming and saying, "Oh, I think I've got a problem with alcohol."
Yeah.
Okay, you need to go to an AA meeting.
yes,
The same information, different situation.
exactly. Yeah. So yeah, no matter what life throws at us, you know, like there's something there that will support all of us.
Mm.
You know, like if we lose a loved one, you know, I lost my auntie a number of years ago, like 5-6 years ago. And I was able to be really present. Part of my amends process to her was being there as she passed, you know, and recovery held me. I had no need to use.
I've seen that a lot recently.
No need.
Yeah, we really have.
A lot of people a lot of close people to me in the rooms have lost loved ones and just been held, and it's been a really sad but beautiful experience for me because I know when that happens to me, I'll have a safe place to go and get upset and still be held. And
You've seen it. It's
not have
possible.
to use. That's the key, isn't it? Not have to use. But yeah, beautiful.
When I wrote my first step 1 in the reservation section,
Yeah.
I'm like, I lose my mum and dad, I'm probably out the door.
Yeah.
Because I wrote my first step 1, 30, 40 days clean when I started my step work. Then my second one, I'm like, no, nothing's going to, I owe it to my mum and dad to stay clean.
Yeah.
Yes.
If they passed, I need to honour what I said to them when I was like, no, I don't use anymore. This is the path I live. I owe it to my, it's like nothing external can happen that's going to change my recovery. Look, one day at a time. And as long as I stay on the path that I am, and I'm staying on the path.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing out there for me.
Yeah.
Pain and misery is out there. Or like I just said before, brimming with happiness.
Yeah.
I know what one I'm picking. And I know what I've got to do to keep it.
Yeah. Totally.
Like you said, when it gets constrained, next thing, what we doing?
Yeah. Keep it fresh, you know, and there's so many different ways to access recovery and recovery services, you know, like for some of us, 12-step fellowship is the answer. I know people who cannot do the 12-step thing.
I wanted to talk a little bit about this actually.
Yeah.
Because we've had some people commenting, and look, 12 steps has been the way for me. I don't know, if you look at the stats and you look at the figures, it's probably by numbers the most successful.
I've not got any knowledge really about
exactly. And
apart from 12-step.
You actually reached out to me, Max, and you was like, what? You're sending this other way? I'm like, there's other ways.
Yeah.
And I would love to get your take on if you've got some information of other ways that do work for
because I do see things online where people are clean, but they're not in recovery.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking,
how?
Yeah.
I'd be like this, holding on to the seat. I definitely wouldn't be with my wife. Yeah. Maybe not seeing my, because I just wouldn't be a nice person. So it's that, how do you heal? Like I always say it, the bonus is that I don't use drink and drugs today, right? The main reason I go to recovery is because it heals that hole in the soul, right?
Yes.
That makes me a nice person.
Spot on, yeah.
So how do you heal that hole in the soul without being in a 12-step fellowship?
Yeah. Well, okay.
Not that you've got the answers to that question.
Yeah, I mean, so you know that my route in was via 12-step recovery. And actually, let's just call it what it is. It's amazing. You know, bearing in mind it's free.
It's a miracle.
Yeah, it's free. And there are people that come in who have been hardcore users for many, many years, who've not gone through rehab, who detox in the rooms, who end up finding, you know, significant recovery and stay just through meetings. It is possible. And additionally, as we know, there are rehabs, there are detox centres. Some of us need that, essential. And then there are others. Like today, I recorded a podcast episode with a wonderful man who is a recovery coach. You know, he's a bona fide qualified recovery coach, because not everybody wants to come into 12-step fellowship.
No, I get that.
And actually, there are different ways to do things, you know. Like,
I think he's using techniques from the fellowship?
He's in the fellowship. So without a doubt, some of that will benefit. And my understanding is he will suggest that people go to meetings. But if you can take you can take a horse to water, but you can't make it drink, right? People have to be engaged and we have to respect people's sovereignty. You know, everybody is an individual. I think other ways that
I suppose you could do like gratitude lifts. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah,
You could
no,
do the
it's okay.
gratitude and the other techniques that we use, but you're not physically going to the meetings or going through the 12 steps. You might be doing like a step 10. They might not call it a step 10 inventory, but they might be doing an inventory.
Yeah, like journaling.
That sort of stuff. Yeah, to get that out.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, gratitude lists are definitely not exclusive to people in recovery.
No,
you know,
of
things like journaling, all of these things that we do.
Your gratitude list is not in the literature.
Yeah,
No.
I mean, they are just like tools of coaching, of, you know, healing, of. So I think there are different ways to do it. I mean, I know plenty of people in my kind of field of work who are abstinent, who don't use drugs, don't use alcohol, who've chosen that pathway after having a really active participation in doing those things, who found their way in through embodiment, through somatic practices. It's like, I think I spoke to Chris about this. For me, like really what we're dealing with when we're using is we're trying to find a way to calm our nervous system.
Right.
So the nervous system is completely dysregulated, sometimes through trauma, sometimes through the things that we're doing while we're using. You know, we've accidentally found ourselves in this kind of complete overload of the nervous system. So we're trying to alchemize and moderate our nervous system by using drugs. So we're trying to calm ourselves down, we're trying to bring ourselves up. For me, I think that if you can access other, we call them modalities, right? But there are other methods of healing that enable you to bring your nervous system into a state of rest.
Yeah, I love that.
What you're doing is you're enabling yourself to feel supported. And then what happens is we start to understand where we meet our edges, right? So we're like, oh, in the practices that I do in embodiment, for instance, a lot of it is about creating a safe space for you to express your rage, for instance. So in creating that, what you do is you start to understand, oh, I'm meeting an edge here. Like, this is where I'm going to blow, you know, like this is how much my nervous system can hold.
Yep.
And then by playing with that in a safe way, we understand we meet our tolerance and we get to push it just a little bit up against the edge. And we expand our nervous system's capacity to hold rage. Now, what happens when we then get triggered or activated in our day-to-day life is we understand and we start to feel like, oh, I've been here before. I can hold this amount. So the things that come up unexpectedly in our day-to-day life are less activating for us because we've practiced holding that much.
Kind of training.
Glass half full.
Breath work, you know, various somatic embodiment practices that are out there are also very proficient at helping people to get in, you know.
So you're like
recovery.
training for that situation to come up in the future. You're training how to deal with it rather than, we say in recovery, respond, not react, that sort of stuff, isn't it? But you're training, I like that, increasing like your tolerance levels around sort of some feelings. You're like training your feelings, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, totally. Because a big part of my journey as well through recovery, like we talk about defects, right? Oh, it's a word I'm like really uncomfortable with.
Me too.
Yeah.
My
I call them shadows.
My counselor
Shadows.
didn't like the words.
Because the thing is, like, I don't want to refer to any part of myself as being defective.
No.
Or negative.
These have been really proficient coping mechanisms for me that have really helped me well, right? They've enabled me to survive. And actually, for me, the best way that I managed to work with my inverted commas defects was to love them.
Right.
I just had to understand what was going on, why they were coming up and trying to protect me, and then say, right, okay, is there a different way that we can respond? You know? And so for me, a big part of my journey was like understanding that what me suppressing my anger was doing was actually really hurting me. It was making me physically ill. It was suppressing all of my creativity. And so if you think about defects, anger is seen as a negative, right? But actually there's a positive form of anger. Anger is a way of us seeing my boundaries been overstepped or I'm not advocating for myself. So we have the ability to look at these, again, inverted commas, defects, / shadows, and say, actually, is this as bad as I'm saying it is, or is there a different way for me to be in relationship with this emotion?
And also, when you think about anger as an emotion, that's a powerful emotion.
Yeah.
You don't want to hold that in.
It's an indicator. It's a warning light.
Yeah.
When we start, the first time I ever felt anger when I was moving through my first step 6, when I really understood the power of anger moving through my body, was like I was in an argument and I noticed that my fists were clenched. It was exhilarating.
Yeah.
It was the first time I'd consciously understood the power of anger.
Yeah.
And it was like a rush. It was
Yeah.
like a high. And I remember like experiencing it and holding it in my body and then calling my sponsor and saying, I just identified a feeling, you know, I just felt anger and it was amazing, you know. Yeah. This was the truth, like, because I was so disembodied, you know, I was so disembodied from what it was to feel. All those years I've been anesthetized, that we go back to basics. And there are different ways to do that. We don't only get to do that in recovery. Yeah. So yeah, it's a wonderful, wonderful toolkit. And I'm aware of time because literally I could just keep going on and on.
Within an hour.
Okay, that's all good.
I think so. First time I checked the watch, it was 1:30. Now we're at 28, and I think we were going for about 5 minutes before that.
I mean, wow. Yeah, like there's so much to talk about.
Yeah.
Recovery
we'll
is
talk about
amazing.
the rest of it on your podcast.
I will say this, right? Recovery, whatever way you come into it, is a superpower. You know, like there are not many people who go through the day, every day, feeling all of their feelings.
No.
Without some outside support, crutch, thing that they're leaning on. Alcohol, drugs, sex, shopping, exercise. All of these things can be used destructively. I have used each of these things destructively and still can fall into that pattern. I've exercised myself to injury. Like, talk about weird addictions. I've sewed myself into like insanity, you know, literally on a sewing machine.
I was a leather worker.
Yeah,
and my fingers were bleeding.
I've got a lawn obsession.
But I had to finish the wallet.
Lawn obsession.
There you go, right? We all have these weird little like things that we get into. But ultimately, you know, we are superpowered because we get to go through our days every day feeling all the feelings and we survive. It doesn't kill us.
No.
That's amazing, right?
It's really amazing.
Magical.
And I've touched on it before. You said earlier, we're blessed.
Yeah, so blessed.
And we are, right? And I've said this a lot, but I truly believe it. I'm glad I'm an addict.
I was going to say, Claire, do you think this is always meant to be your path? I think I know the answer to that question, but
I trust that everything that's happened was for a reason because I believe it's my medicine.
That had to happen so that you get this.
Yeah, like my soul chose this, you know, this pathway.
And I completely agree. Like I spoke about, this happiness I'm feeling right now, I don't think I would have ever felt this unless I come into recovery. Yeah. I don't think I could have ever been the person I am. And granted, I wish that there was a little bit less destruction and a little bit less harm done, but I think it was necessary. Yeah. For, like I said to you earlier, to be beaten into that state of reasonableness where change had to happen. Yeah. If it was, Max talks about it, if they'd have had an intervention a week before he got clean, he might have brushed it off.
Totally.
It had to happen when it happened.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm from a family of addicts, essentially. My dad was an addict, or he's an addict. You know, my sisters are addicts. You know, I came into recovery.
I know your sister.
And one of my sisters in recovery, I actually was able to 12-step her and take her to a meeting. Yeah. You know?
She's great.
When she got clean, I had her kids. They came to live with me.
I remember that.
Crazy.
Wow. Yeah.
It was also a gift. And it reciprocally, it changed my life. It showed me how prevalent my work addiction was. So even though there was me being of service to her, she just did the most amazing thing for me. She sort of really shone a light on where my illness, my disease was still playing out. So we just can't predict what this journey is going to bring for us. But if we trust, because when you look back, you both have examples of where you look back now, something you were going through was just hard, right?
Oh, yeah.
But we look back now and we're like, I can see why that happened now.
Yeah, totally.
Needed it.
And that builds our faith, right?
Gives
the
us a
next time
callus.
something hard comes along, we're like, it's almost like, I always say this, you become a bit sadomasochistic because you're like, oh, this is so painful. But because you've survived so many painful things and come out shining on your feet, you're almost like, now I'm like, oh, this is so painful. Oh, goody. Yeah. Like, what's on the other side? This is going to be
good. Have you read David Goggins?
What's my learning?
Who?
David Goggins.
No.
He's like a Navy SEAL.
Fitness lunatic,
not the sort of thing I would read.
No, but
yeah, maybe.
It's all about, it's sort of like, so a mate of mine, shout out Gumbo, right? When I was in treatment.
He sounds fun.
Oh, he's brilliant. He's brilliant. His name's Luke. I saw his driving license once. I was like, what? Like, I didn't know his name, you know what I mean? But he's an absolute lovely guy. Told him I was in rehab, and he was like, brilliant, because he saw me towards the end. We was working together, and he was like, I've started reading. And he was like, oh, what's the address of the place? I'll send you some books.
Amazing.
He sent me Papillon, which is like a great story about this guy who gets sent to the penal colony. They've made a film about it.
Yeah.
Then he sent me Jaws,
Love it.
which is just like
That was the first book I ever
a fun
read.
story to read. Yeah, didn't love it actually. And he sent me David Goggins, which is like a motivational self-help type book. And I was like, thanks so much. So like, I read Goggins, right? And he says it's all about when the body feels like it needs to give up, you can tell it, we ain't anywhere near done. You go again.
Yeah.
And what he says is you build a callous mind. You get calluses on your mind. So like, you get to 10 miles when you're running. He's like, I ran 30 yesterday, mate. Keep going. And that's a lot like that stuff you said. When you feel that pain, you feel that anger, you feel like, no, this is too much. You're like, I can take way more than this.
Yeah.
Bring it on.
Yeah.
Bring life on. I'm nowhere near done.
Claire,
So it's like,
I know before we let you go, because I know I think it's been an amazing chat we've had here. It's been fantastic. And I just love the layers of yourself that you've uncovered over the years. But I know there'll be a lot of newcomers screaming at their phones and saying, because we started off with, right, you need a base in recovery, right?
Yeah.
So how did you get that base? Like maybe 5-10 minutes of that, how you got that base in recovery when you first came in to enable you to now live how you're living today. Do you know what I mean? Because that's what we're all after. If that's okay.
Yeah, I'd be like absolutely happy to talk about that. So for me, it was through 12-step recovery, and I had tried to get periods of clean time.
Yeah.
And I would always get a little bit of abstinence as a functioning addict, but I'd always snap back to it when a feeling came along.
Yeah.
Or there was a reason to celebrate. That was a famous one.
Oh,
of
yeah,
mine.
yeah.
You know,
John's birthday at work.
Yeah.
I've got 60 days. I'll treat myself with drugs.
I was always calling home. I remember, like, my ex, bless him, he put up with so much. I'd call home and go, oh, we're celebrating. He'd go, you're always bloody celebrating. And, you know, like these indicators.
My wife used to say the same thing.
Awful, any excuse. But for me, I called a helpline actually. So I'd gone out and I'd got on it, and I'd taken a junior colleague hostage overnight because she'd missed her train. And, you know, I did her a great favour of letting her come back to mine, and then we just sat up all night using while my partner and my daughter were upstairs in bed, you know, like awful business. And then I think I'd crawled into bed at like 6 a.m. or something, and my partner had been like, where the f have you been? And who's that in the spare bedroom? You know, you disgust me, you know, and quite right. I had to get up, I think, within an hour or two with my daughter to get her to nursery. It was carnage. So that brought me to my knees, because ultimately I had so much shame around it. I couldn't go to work. For me, big part of my denial was I could always get to work. As long as I could get to work, I was okay.
So
what I found was I was sat at my kitchen table and I was broken. I couldn't stop crying, and I was desperate, and I really was considering ending it. You know, and it sounds like it's not that big a deal, but it was a cumulative 24 years of juggling. I was exhausted. And so I remembered coming out of clubs, and, you know, in the packets of flyers we used to get, or maybe it's me showing my age because I'm 50 now, right? There was this organisation called Frank.
Yeah, I remember Frank.
Right, wicked.
Talk to
so
Frank.
It was like, talk to Frank, right? So I was like, I'm going to ask Frank. So, you know,
Frank?
like, I got the number and I called Frank, and the person said, you know, what goes up must come down. That's basically where you're at today, Claire. But it really sounds like you'd do well to go to a meeting.
nice.
Now, I knew about meetings because I'd taken my sister, who's an alcoholic, to meetings. And now realise when I've sat in those meetings, going to her, this is really good. Are you getting this? That I was getting a message. But I hadn't associated myself as being an addict or an alcoholic. Now,
because you're still working, holding down the job.
Your ego weren't ready for that.
Husband, kid,
what I later learned was that all of the outside stuff that I had was all part of the denial.
Yeah.
You know, the more stuff I kept, the more functioning I was, the more in denial I could be. So like I say, when I couldn't make it to work, part of the denial was smashed, and it was like, oh, and there were consequences as well at work to me just not turning up, to me taking a junior member of staff hostage, all of it. It was awful, the shame. Anyway, I went to a meeting.
Yeah.
I followed the suggestion, and I went to a meeting the next day, 12-step fellowship, and it just was kind of a strange experience because I felt like I recognised everyone in that circle.
Yeah.
You know, I had a very kind man, as I said earlier, this chap Steve, say, well, even if you was only smoking weed, you'd be welcome. You know, like little seeds were sowed. And I remember looking around the circle and thinking, do I know this lot, or is this a setup?
Yeah.
Why? But
Who
they
have
all
they been
shit
speaking to?
me.
Yeah.
Like, why is he saying that? Because that sounds like my story, you know? And
Identification.
they said they were doing a birthday, and I thought it was a birthday, but it turned out it was a clean time birthday. They invited me for fellowship.
Oh, nice.
So I went to the meeting after the meeting, and everyone was just like having a laugh, and they were taking the piss out of each other and laughing at it. And I was just thinking, what kind of weirdness is this?
Mm.
And when it came to taking drinks, they didn't order drinks. And I was like, oh, well, you're not having a drink? And they were like, no, we're abstinent. We're in recovery. So I just kept doing what was suggested.
That's it.
You know, like I just followed along. And what really fell in quite quickly for me, so I tried to white knuckle it for a few weeks. Ended up going to an NA meeting on New Year's Eve, I think, or it was another fellowship, and someone there told me there's an NA meeting here, Wanstead, on the Monday.
Meeting.
I rocked up there, and I just knew I'd come home to my tribe.
Yeah.
You know, I was like, these are my people. I always think NA is like the hippies of the 12-step fellowships. Yeah, like we're just quite laid back. And I love that the NA principle is the disease of addiction. It's not one substance, like we don't differentiate. So it means even if your behavior is wonky, that qualifies. And so then what I did was I went to meetings every day. So if you are struggling, I would suggest go to a meeting, keep an open mind. Like there's this old adage, listen for the similarities, not the differences. Just see if you can just keep yourself on the seat and just stay. And then the next day, go back to another meeting. There's this thing that everybody talks about of 90 and 90. That means you go to 90 meetings in 90 days. Basic psychology is it takes 90 days to create a new pattern, to break those neural pathways.
Break an old habit, create a new one.
Exactly. And we lay down these neural pathways. That's the reason behind it. If that feels like a stretch, go to 7 meetings in 7 days.
And then do it again.
And then do it again and again and
meet
again.
a day for 3 months.
At some point, the penny drops, right? And then the suggestions are take people's numbers, reach out. That stuff in the early days really kept me safe.
Yeah.
There was one day where for no reason whatsoever, I felt like I wanted to pick up. And I remember my ex saying, what about that bloke Bobby? You know, why don't you call him? He's been good, isn't he? Your friend at the meetings. And I called him, and he said to me, have you got any candles? I was like, what kind of weirdness is this? Why do I need candles? What's he telling me to do? And he said, I want you to go upstairs and run a bath, light the candles, turn the lights off, get in the bath. And he was basically, what he was doing is teaching me how to regulate my nervous system, right? And to stay in the house. And so I followed it. And then lo and behold, after my bath, crying into the bath with my candles, I felt better. You know, I was another day clean. So it's about just accumulating another day clean, following the suggestions, getting yourself a support network, taking numbers, using the numbers, and get a sponsor. Get somebody who's further along the path. Listen to people and how they're sharing. And don't be enamored by the glamour and the war stories. Listen to someone who sounds like they've got their shit together. Yeah. And if they sound like there is something here that I feel attracted to, and I don't mean
physically,
sexually, physically, right? If there's something about their story, about their personality, about their embodiment of how they all work in their program, ask for their number, connect with them, see if they're available for sponsorship, and follow their suggestions. You know, if they say call me, call them. If one of the best pieces of advice that I was given, and I guess this could apply whether you're in the rooms or, you know, in 12-step or not, is do the opposite of what your head tells you.
Yeah.
And actually, for me, I'll be honest, at the beginning, that was confusing because I didn't know how to tell the difference between my head and my heart.
Yeah.
But I learned in time, you know. So I'd just say get yourself into the meetings.
Love it.
So like I always try and say, oh, well, there's no magic formula, but there is. Everything you just explained, that is the magic formula.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
That's
And for me, right, it's exactly that. Take the suggestions, go to the meetings, and every now and then you might have to just hang on for dear life until the next meeting.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you know, like in American sports, they're like huddle up and they're like, right, this is what we're gonna do. Break.
Yeah.
Right? That's the meeting. You huddle up, right? Another 24 hours.
Yeah.
We're not gonna use. Break. And then you go back and then you huddle up again the next night. And it's just like after a while, you've done the 1990, you've broken the habit, you formed the new one. All of a sudden, people come up to you and your program's attractive to them.
That's
and then
right.
it just moves, right? So I don't think anyone could have explained it better than you just did, right? Perfect. That's what you do when you come in. And every now and then, you might have to just hang on.
And that's what we do even with clean time, right?
Of course you do.
So I spoke about the whole, you know, coming out process. It's exactly what I had to do. I had to go back to basics.
Yeah.
And there have been times in my recovery, there's been a, you know, I think we come into recovery and we get these periods of time where we think, I've got this. You know, as soon as the ego comes in and tells you, yeah, I've got this, I know what I'm doing now, you're in trouble. So, you know, like I had a real rock bottom at 7 years. I got 7 years clean. And then in the December, by the January, I was close to relapse. I'd had a spiritual relapse.
7 year itch.
It's a real thing.
It is.
And actually somebody scooped me up, you know, they were like, you need to do a meeting every day. My sponsor was away, but you know, this fellow in the local fellowship was like, you need to do a meeting each day and let's connect on the phone. And we started reading the basic text together and it reinvigorated my recovery. So I think even us with a bit of clean time, there's no shame in needing to go back to basics, you know. In fact, I picked up a white key ring at 7 years clean. Like I re-surrendered because I needed to, because what we talk about in 12-step fellowship is like the disease works on a physical, mental and spiritual foundation. And if you haven't got all three of those intact, you're fucked. Mine had gone
like a three-legged stool.
I'd stop praying, I'd stop meditating, I'd totally disengage from any form of higher power connection. So actually I had to re-surrender. Yeah. I had to admit there's something out there that I'm trying to run things here. So yeah, you know, there's no shame in going back to basics and asking for help, even if you've got clean time.
Yeah.
Or if you had clean time, you stopped coming to meetings, you've relapsed, there's nothing that's bigger than us wanting you to be well.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, the shame's in not coming back.
Totally, babes. Totally.
Amazing.
Yeah. Look, I think that's a great way to end it. Thank you so much for coming on. If people want to find your stuff, where can they go? What's your podcast called again?
My podcast is called In Service to Transformation and it's across all of the major platforms, Spotify, Amazon, Apple. You can find me on Instagram. I am Claire Darnell and I've also got a website, clairedarnell.com. So
fantastic.
Come on down.
Go and have a look, guys. You will not be disappointed. Thanks again for coming on.
Thank you.
And Max, brilliant stuff.
Thank
Wicked,
you.
mate.
See you later,
Thank
guys.
Cheers.